do something bad, it might come to you stealthily at night. You can't escape the haunting. You wake up, but cannot move. The haunt is actually a demon, or the children of a demon. It feeds on your own evil.
Today, I have a haunting story that's just right for you. I want to tell a story that happened to me years ago. Back then, our neighbor was an old and very calm man named Alfonso. He always had a mysterious side. A few days later, a young, beautiful woman came looking for Alfonso at our door. I told her she was mistaken and that Alfonso lived downstairs. I told him about it too. "Who would be looking for me?" he said, and told me he didn't know anyone like the person I described. So I said, "Let me show you who it is from the camera above my door." When we went home and I showed him the camera recordings, he looked like he had seen a ghost. His color turned pale white, and he couldn't speak for a while. When I insisted on asking what was wrong, he began to explain. Many years ago, he said he was married and very happy, and continued. One day, his wife's grandmother invited them over for dinner. They lived in an old apartment building. The grandmother, a seasoned and well-meaning woman, was showing my wife Maria an old photo album after dinner. The album was filled with old items, and it mentioned an old chest that caught my interest. The chest was beautifully crafted from rosewood. When I hesitantly asked if I could look inside, my wife's grandmother didn't deny me. A small box came out of the chest, a tiny box with a little lock on it. When I asked, "What is this?" the old woman dismissed it, saying, "It's nothing, my son, just that." My wife Maria, curious, asked, "What really is inside this?" The old woman took a deep breath and said to me, "This box has been passed down from my grandmother and from her mother to her. When I die, it will be given to your mother and then to you. We always carry this but never open it, my daughter, and you will do the same. Don't ask why, because there is no reason," she said. Hearing this, I was really affected. This might have been the most mysterious thing I had heard about this family. A box that has been carried for generations but never opened. After dinner, on our way back home, I asked Maria what that box was. "It's probably nothing. Maybe there are just some old photographs inside. What could it be?" she said. But it was not the same for me. I really wanted to find out what it was. That night, I even saw the old box in my dream. In my dream, when I opened the box, it contained jewels and old photographs. A young woman came and even thanked me. She said, "Thanks to you, I will come back to life." When I woke up in the morning and told Maria about my dream, she laughed. "You are too obsessed with this box thing," she said. Whatever I did, it was a holiday. I took my wife and we went back to her grandmother's house. This time, I was going to take that box and open it, just look inside and then give it back. And that's what I did. Somehow I took the box and put it in my bag. I didn't even mention it to my wife. At night, I secretly got up and moved to the living room. It was around 1 a.m. I opened the box and black smoke and a foul smell came out. Inside the box, there was an old tarnished ring and a notebook. The notebook was yellowish, written in an old language. I couldn't understand what it said. I took photos of every single page. I closed the box back and hid it. In my dream, a young woman thanked me again. "Now I live within you, and I am alive," she said. In the morning, I sent the photos to a university friend who understands ancient languages and asked him to translate them for me. It was a short text anyway. My wife couldn't wake up early that morning. Actually, that suited my purposes. I had a short phone conversation with my academic friend and told him it was a story. He would send me the translation during the day. As our phone conversation ended, Maria had woken up. Her face was pale and she felt sick. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, but it was more of an insinuating question than a normal one. "Just an old friend from university, our Carlos." I brushed it off, but she wasn't very satisfied. That day, Maria was always frowning and approaching me with an attitude. Whenever I looked at my phone, she would say, "Who is that again?" When I went out shopping, she started asking ridiculous questions like, "Did you meet someone?" This wasn't the Maria I knew. I thought it must be her illness. She would get better in a day or two, but things started getting worse every day. I still hadn't put that little box back in its place. I needed to make up an excuse to go to Maria's grandmother's house to put the box back, but forget going to her grandmother's. She was suspicious, even when I just went out into the street. Carlos still hadn't sent the translations. While Maria and I were sitting watching TV, the doorbell rang. When I looked, there was a woman I didn't recognize standing at the door. When I asked if I could help, we realized that she had actually come to the wrong apartment. She was supposed to go to the apartment upstairs, but seeing this, Maria became more aggressive than ever before. She was constantly yelling, and her eyes even seemed blacker. After a couple of hours of silence, she made me coffee. I thought maybe she wanted to make peace, and so it was. Her nerves had calmed down a bit. Meanwhile, Carlos called me to say that the translations were ready, and I met him outside to get them. I thought, finally some good news. But I didn't get a chance to read them that day. The next evening after work, Maria had prepared coffee for me. Everything seemed fine. I wanted to open and read the translation immediately, but I was feeling a bit weak from yesterday, had some pains. These recent events had really worn me out. I started reading the story, and with every line, I became more horrified. At that moment, I noticed Maria was not in her place. I thought she was just here a moment ago. Then it hit me that I needed to put the box back as soon as possible. Somehow I would resolve this tomorrow. I went to bed early that night. At midnight, I woke up with stomach pain. I got up to drink some water. Maria was sleeping next to me. I didn't even turn on the light to avoid waking her. Walking down the corridor, I heard some whispers. Could it be a burglar? As I slowly tiptoed closer, I saw Maria in one of the rooms, kneeling down, talking to herself. No, I can't do this, she was mumbling. Then, if Maria is here, who was in the bed? I thought, and I felt faint and passed out. When it was morning, I was in my bed. Maria was looking at me, and her grandmother was there too. When I asked what happened to me, Maria said, I found you passed out in the corridor last night. Her grandmother then asked me, Son, are you not eating well? Turning to Maria, she said, Daughter, go make some soup for your husband, and sent Maria to the kitchen. I was sitting up in a chair when the old woman came close and whispered, We shouldn't have opened the water, my son. At that moment, it felt as if boiling water was being poured over my head. I blurted out, No, I didn't open it, while the old woman came closer again and said, You shouldn't have opened that box. Do you think that entity in the kitchen right now is Maria? The old woman also looked behind to make sure Maria couldn't hear us. What are you saying, grandmother? You've opened the cursed one. It's haunting Maria, just like it did her great-grandmother. It won't stop until it kills you, she said. At that moment, I wanted to hear that this was a joke, but that woman was very serious. The old woman then said to me, You're feeling weak, aren't you, my son? You haven't had any strength lately, have you? Yes. How do you know? When I asked, she replied, It's all written on that paper. Just like her great-grandmother poisoned her husband, Maria is poisoning you, and eventually she will kill you. If I hadn't noticed the box was missing and come here tonight, Maria would have already killed you by now. Don't eat or drink anything she gives you. Come to my house immediately, she said. That day, I flushed everything Maria gave me down the toilet, using some excuse, and left the house at the first chance. I felt really unwell. Maybe I should have gone to a hospital, but I went straight to the old woman's house instead. She invited me in and said, This curse has been on our family for years. We never opened that box. When you opened it, the entity haunted Maria. It's clouding her mind. Isn't there a solution? I asked the old woman. There is, but it's long and arduous. We can handle it, but you need to be far away, she said. She was the only person I could trust now. I had ruined my life with my own hands. Nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I went home feeling scared and exhausted, and I said, Let's just go to bed, but I was forcing myself not to fall asleep. While I was asleep, Maria was quietly talking to herself and trembling in her sleep. I started to get really scared, but eventually I drifted off to sleep. With my eyes closed, I was lying in bed, and I started to feel suffocated. I opened my eyes, and Maria was trying to suffocate me. My breath was being cut off, and I was almost passing out. She was incredibly strong and seemed intent on killing me. I managed to reach the water bottle next to me and hit her on the head with difficulty, causing her to faint. Then I called her grandmother, and she came right away. Subsequently, the situation required us to admit her to a mental hospital, where she had been for years. However, today I received a call informing me that she had escaped from the hospital. No one knows where she is, and the woman you showed me in the footage is the same woman I've been seeing in my dreams, he said. Unfortunately, I didn't see Alfonso for a few days after this incident. One day, when I was coming home from work, I saw police cars in our apartment complex. As I approached, I saw them pulling out a deceased person in a body bag from the apartment. When I asked, they said it was Alfonso, and they found him suffocated at least 2 days ago in his bed. After this incident, I moved out of that apartment immediately and never opened any unknown boxes. I also recommend that you don't open them either.